Thank you, Nigel, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm delighted to be here today to talk to you about my work as the Groceries Code Adjudicator. Fruit producers play a vital role in the British grocery sector, and I know how challenging it's been for growers in recent years. I'm going to be talking about some of the issues that growers and other suppliers have been facing and how I'm engaging with the 14 biggest grocery retailers to ensure that they're treating direct suppliers lawfully and fairly. I want to hear about the issues that you're facing and answer as many of your questions as I can, so I'm not going to speak for too long. So let me start by explaining what the Groceries Code Adjudicator does. So as the GCA, I'm the UK regulator who ensures that the 14 largest grocery retailers treat their direct suppliers lawfully and fairly and comply with the Grocery Supply Code of Practice, or what we call the Code. Amazon was the most recent retailer to be designated in March last year. My aim is to prevent a range of negative behaviours by retailers and ensure they treat their direct suppliers both fairly and lawfully. In total, the code contains 17 paragraphs covering a range of issues, from delays in payment to products being delisted without reasonable notice and how promotions are handled. It's important to note that the scope of the GCA's work is largely set by the parameters of the code. For example, the code only covers those who sell directly to one of the retailers. So if you're a primary producer who sells to another company or through a consolidator, buying or marketing desk, then you're not covered. However, some of my work may still benefit you. And a link to the code is available from the GCA website. I was appointed as adjudicator in October 2020. I'm a solicitor, as Nigel indicated. I studied law and spent most of my career working in industries selling products and services in highly competitive, price-sensitive markets. I take a collaborative approach to regulating the 14 retailers, and I work closely with their co-compliance officers, or what we call CCOs. My preference is to resolve suppliers' problems quickly by raising them directly with retailers, usually in a meeting with the CCO. I expect the CCO to investigate the issue and explain how they will resolve it. When I raise an issue, I never share any details that would allow the retailer to identify the supplier. If it's an industry-wide issue, I may publish best practice statements, such as on how a retailer conducts forensic audits, or issue recommendations or formal guidance to all of the retailers. This approach has been really effective in delivering quick results, as it's secured buy-in from all stakeholders and has allowed me to measure retailer performance against agreed best practice. Otherwise, I can investigate formally whether a retailer has broken the code, and if I decide that a retailer has breached the code, I can fine them up to 1% of their UK revenue. And finally, I can also arbitrate in code disputes between suppliers and retailers. I'm now going to talk about some of the ongoing challenges facing the sector. Inflation has been the biggest non-COVID, non-labour challenge in the grocery sector in the last few years. The first thing to say is that the outcome of cost price increase requests, or CPIs, submitted to a retailer is a commercial matter for retailers and suppliers to agree, not itself a code issue, as I do not regulate price. And as you heard from Minette earlier during her presentation, this is an issue in the sector. However, this issue of price, particularly when negotiations have been conducted poorly, and suppliers feel that retailers have not understood the true impact of rising costs, has had a significant impact on the relationships between suppliers and retailers. So in January last year, in response to the pressures faced by suppliers, I published my 7 golden rules, representing the best practice for handling CPI requests that all the retailers recognise and have told me that they have aspired to achieve. You can view the rules on the GCA website, but broadly they promote very clear communication, fair use of information, support for buyers, and no automatic delists. Since then, I've made my expectations clear to the retailers that for so long as inflationary pressures are resulting in the need for CPI requests to be made, then they are all honouring these rules. Since publication, the rules have become a fixed item on my meeting agendas with the retailers, and I'm asking them to share data with me on the number of requests they're receiving, the speed with which they're responding. I want to know how quickly they're acknowledging the inbound CPI request and responding substantively. Retailers are showing me the processes they have in place to ensure buyers are dealing with requests both promptly and fairly. I'm still prioritising this issue and encouraging all the retailers to improve their responses. I have seen fewer CPI issues coming to me since the 7 golden rules were published, but I do want to hear if you're still having any difficulty. Whilst cost price increases are still impacting the sector, we're now very clearly in a period of increasing focus on cost price decreases. I'm sure that many suppliers are very concerned by this, especially if margins have been squeezed by agreed CPIs, which did not fully reflect the increase in a supplier's costs. Inflation continues to impact the sector, and it remains a focus of mine. I'm alert to the pattern of changing prices, and as food inflation has started to ease and some input prices fall, I expect negotiation of any cost price decreases to be conducted fairly. The principles behind my 7 golden rules should apply on the way down as on the way up. This should mean, for example, that buyers are aware of the need to apply a fair approach to negotiation, where suppliers have locked in to longer-term contracts on items such as raw ingredients, energy or other utilities to secure supply on the way up, so that even though a market indice may show a price falling, supplier costs will still remain high. So I implore suppliers to let me know confidentially if they think buyers are not following the principles of the 7 golden rules. I've spoken about buyer inexperience and behaviour a number of times in recent years. At my own annual conference last month, we heard how suppliers are still raising this issue, with one supplier explaining that inexperienced buying teams are making less considered decisions. I'm concerned by the loss of established buyers who have real depth of knowledge and have experience of practically solving problems together with their suppliers. The sector has faced very difficult issues over the last few years. Handling them in a way that doesn't damage relationships is much more difficult when a buyer or others in the team haven't faced similar issues before. With a large cohort of new, less experienced buyers, the retailers need to ensure that they have the soft skills to build relationships and are also being educated about the industries and suppliers from whom they are buying. Buyers need a breadth of knowledge covering the challenges facing their suppliers, such as which input prices are changing and whether they're affected by labour shortages, weather patterns and so on. But they also need a depth of knowledge based on each individual supplier. A top fruit grower will face different challenges to a multinational and may need additional support. And I've spoken to all of the retailers about how they are monitoring and ensuring buyers are engaging with their suppliers, including through visits to the farm and developing the required knowledge to improve their decision making. If suppliers are finding that buyers are not visiting the farm, please keep inviting them. but also let me know so that I can understand for which retailers this is a significant problem that really needs to be addressed. Some retailers have been making changes to their supply chain structures, especially in the fresh produce sector, where retailers are inserting or removing consolidators or buying or marketing desks. The explicit protections of the code may be afforded to or removed from some businesses in the supply chain. And if suppliers have been affected by this, I'd really be interested to hear from them. Though this is not necessarily a breach of the code, I do want to be sure that retailers are properly explaining the change in supply of this nature and really giving plenty of notice before any change is made. In response to the current volatile economic conditions and some failed CPI negotiations, I've seen an uptick in the number of retailers conducting range reviews and therefore code delists. When a product is delisted, the retailers must follow the code, giving reasonable notice, and that's not 12 weeks as standard. They must also give the supplier the chance to have the decision reviewed. Delists cannot be automatic, and retailers shouldn't threaten automatic delisting if a CPI is requested. However, it is the case that the genuine commercial reasons that a retailer must have before delisting a product can include erosion of margin if a cost price cannot be agreed and no other accommodation can be reached. As the cost of living crisis continues, we may see further efforts from retailers to reduce their ranges or reject CPI requests, leading to further delisting. And I'm very keen to hear confidentially whether you've experienced either an increase in the number of products delisted in recent months or delists being threatened. The last issue I'd like to touch upon is retailers requiring certain actions from their suppliers. The code restricts retailers from requiring suppliers to take certain actions, including paying as a condition of being a supplier. And I've reminded all of the CCOs of this requirement in July, and I will remind them again. And if I believe that a retailer may have required an action that it should not have, I will challenge them to provide evidence that there was no requirement. And again, I'd like to hear confidentially from any supplier if they believe that they might have been subject to a requirement to take an action in contravention of the code. So throughout this short talk this afternoon, I've highlighted the importance of supplier feedback on retailer behaviour in helping me to hold the retailers to account. When suppliers tell me about an issue they're facing, not only am I able to give the relevant information to inform their next steps, but that information also helps me to mould engagement with a retailer. However, I'm also aware that many suppliers are not willing to raise an issue with the GCA as they believe that the retailer would find out and that there will be consequences for their business. So I want to take the opportunity today to emphasize that for everything that you tell me, I will protect your confidentiality. I have a legal duty to do so. So if I raise your issue with a retailer, I'll do so in a way that doesn't reveal who your company is or even what products you supply. So for example, I often amalgamate complaints from several suppliers, or I only provide very top level information. When I raise issues in this way, I expect the CCOs at the retailers to investigate to find out whether and how widespread the practice is, and also to think about solutions. That might be reiterating expected behaviours to all buyers, reworking annual training or amending processes so that senior members within a buying team have oversight before a decision is made. But I also encourage suppliers to contact the CCOs at the retailers. All of the CCOs have agreed to respect suppliers' confidentiality, so not sharing suppliers' details within the retailer unless the supplier expressly agrees to the disclosure. In addition, all 14 retailers have agreed to ensure that suppliers do not face any negative consequences as a result of raising issues with the business directly or with the CCO. So please let me know if an issue is raised with a retailer and you feel that they have breached this commitment. And if you don't want to discuss an issue in the open forum today, you can use the contact details on the screen behind me. You can email inquiries@groceriescode.gov.uk with information on a retailer's behaviour, or you can set a meeting up with me at a later date. Again, all discussions remain completely confidential. Or if you want to remain completely anonymous, you can use my Tell the GCA online platform. You can provide as much information as you'd like, and you don't have to reveal any identifying information about yourself. All communications are conducted through the platform, and you can access the Tell the GCA website through my GCA website. And so, with that, thank you all for listening, and I'm going to hand back to Nigel for questions.
Thank you very much for that. If you do have any questions, please ask them now, because I think that is a big point. I'm just going to reiterate. It's inquiries@groceriescode.gov.uk and tell the GCA.co.uk, which is completely anonymous online, so it's really useful. Because that's the big factor, isn't it? That people just thinking, I've had enough, or I need to get some form of security, and therefore to basically register their worries or complaints, but do so in a safe, environment.
Absolutely, and it's completely confidential, and I'm very open to meeting suppliers in the way they feel most comfortable. Could be online, through Teams, face-to-face, however they would like to do it.
Yeah, great. And how did it come about, the journey for you to end up doing this side? I know something that you've actually was taking a great interest in, but more and more so where it actually became a career.
Well, I worked for the world's largest food service company and retired, and it was a transition, so I'm very used to very complex food supply chains across 52 countries, and so supply chains have been part and parcel of my life.
Makes sense, absolutely. As I say, yes, we have got the mic there, Ed's on mic, but otherwise, if you want to do anything, of course, confidentially, and have a chat with Mark, again, now's the time, but otherwise it's through those. But a really great service that you offer, and it gives people in the retail sector the opportunity to go and register their thoughts and take it further. So thank you very much. Brilliant indeed as ever. Mark White, just great to have you here, the Grocery Code Adjudicator. And we're going to have a bit of a break, then we're going to have the Rural Policy Group with Baroness Bennett of Manor-Castle, Mark Lumsden-Taylor of McIntyre Hudson, Stuart Nichols of Savills, and Catherine Lloyd of Gulden Solicitors, who are making all this happen and sponsored this. But in the meantime, Mark, thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good to see you.